Thank you for listening to me tonight. I have a bit of a cold, but I will do my best. So if I sound a little nasally, I apologize. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about some of the future trends in eco-art using technology. I sort of coined this art, tech, and earth, but I also do think elements of design should be incorporated into this. So a little bit about my background. So here we go. I am sort of a multifaceted person. I see myself working in the environmental region, looking at sustainability, particularly green technologies and energy systems. And I also really find that important to connect that to community, getting the community involved to look at behavioral change. And I also incorporate new media art within this, so some of the new genre practices. So how I approach this is I look at myself as an artist, more as a service provider. Andrea Fraser, who's a performance artist, says that artists actually provide services over just products. And I see that there's that combination of different things, but looking at translating information, looking at things like bringing in community, changing behavior, making things accessible to the layman is sort of what I focus on within my art practice. So when I approach what I'm going to talk about tonight, I'm really bringing in these three elements into it, and this is how I practice within the different type of things that I work on. And I really am looking at this in the umbrella of eco-art, and I'm trying to redefine eco-art, and some people would call it more environmental art or green art, and the words are interchangeable. But I want to look at eco-art more as an umbrella, and then the things on the right side are sort of the media in which things can get expressed. I'm not going to go into the history of eco-art, but I do want to kind of express that it's not just a medium that is worked within it, but it's almost like a purpose. So if you think about the planet and how a lot of artists try to approach making work that reflects the environment, whether it be nature, water, technology, really what they're trying to do is kind of communicate in some way a message or a dialogue that in some way is going to bring awareness and possibly change down the road to the way people address and behave within our planet and our earth. And so when I look at eco-art, it's just really about more of the way that artists want to actually make people aware and change. So this is a picture of my grandma. Okay, so my grandmother is, you know, she's 84 years old. She knows how to use a computer. She knows how to use an iPad and a Kindle. She knows how to Skype. But she may not understand some of the really big complex systems that are being made and used throughout our industry and country today. So some of these systems that I'm thinking about in terms of making understandable and available is climate change data. Climate change data is really confusing. It's put together by scientists from all around the world in charts and graphs, and it's a controversial subject. Some people negate it, don't believe in it, and some people try to tell us that we need to act on it. So how does my grandmother understand climate change data? I'm trying to figure that out. The other thing is energy information systems. What is an energy information system? Basically, that's your smart meter. So every home in the California is has a little meter connected to it that tells you how much energy you're using. And most of new corporate developments, new commercial buildings have big systems that tell you about your building, your envelope, how much energy you're using. How does somebody like my grandmother understand how to understand the energy that is used in her home? And then I feel like something other that's also very important to put into that is economy, the economic strategies and elements. And a lot of times the way the economic systems are developed are actually against environmental systems. If you're looking at profit as the bottom line, profit actually equates to destruction of different environmental elements. It's the cheapest way, the fastest way, the way that usually ends up being the most destructive. But I want to address these systems and how artists are looking at them and trying to make them understandable to the layman, to people like my grandmother. And I'll show you some examples of that in a second. I am going to pass this around. This is something I'm also interested in terms of like looking at these energy information systems and design. Although this isn't powered up, it doesn't have the batteries in it. This is like an old version of a smart meter. And it was made to place inside your home so you can understand how much energy your home is using. And I don't know about you, but to me, when I look at this, it doesn't make me want to do anything. And I probably would forget about it. And does anybody look at this and be like, yeah, I'm going to go look at this every day and make sure, you know, my energy levels are right, and I'm going to assess this. This is the same sort of system that is on your home right now. And I'll pass this around because I think interface design, empathic design, and design that creates behavior and change is very important to understand when we're looking at eco-art, when we're looking at design, and how to change those systems. So I'll start up front. You guys just pass it. I have lots of things to show and tell today, so I'll pass it a couple times. I also have questions on the bottom up here, and if you have questions for me and I don't get to them tonight, you can also tweet me at art_inspector. And so one of the questions that I'll pose tonight is, what system would you like to understand better? So besides these things like climate change data, energy information systems, what is something else that's really complex that you feel like should be addressed and understood? Okay. So I'm going to go over a few projects. I'm going to go over 2 of my own personal projects, and then go to some other really important examples of artists working in eco-art using technology. And the first one I'm going to talk about is one that I did a few years ago. It's called BERG, Building User Response Gadgets. Now, all of us go into a building every day, whether it be your home or a place we work. And you probably aren't completely aware of all the energy that the building is using, right? Like if you're thinking about where we're in right now, you're not paying attention to the lights, you're not paying attention to the outlets or how much power this place is using. It's something that we actually really ignore. But it's also something that, for example, the state of California is trying to lower its residential emissions by 30% in the next 10 years. And it has to do with how people interact and work with their buildings. Now, you get a PG&E bill that tells you some information about your buildings. It may have a little graph that says you're using this much energy during the day, this much energy at night. You may be able to get a small little device that connects all your washer, your dryer, all your TV, and gives you information about that. But is there something that can happen within your building that makes you actually have a better relationship with it, that makes you actually want to understand it better, to act on it? And that's sort of what I'm trying to get at with BERG, is how can you anthropomorphize your home so that you understand it just as well as you understand your body. And so I did 2 different things with this project. Well, for one, it was a site-specific project. I did it at San Jose State University at their engineering school. So I used this new commercial building to to use their interface. I connected to their cold water, steam, and electricity, and I work with their facilities department and the engineering department to bring in live data about what the energy was using, and also information from their smart meter. Okay, what's happening within this building. And then I actually created an interface that people, when they come into the building, can understand it a little bit more. Over here or here? Okay, so I'll show you a quick video about that. Let me just press play over here. So this is, I call this BERG macro, and this basically is taking all the utilities of the building and connecting it to a heart and a lungs, just as if we understand our own personal respiratory system and our cardiovascular system, we understand when we're exerting ourselves too much, when we're overworked, what that means, that we need to rest, that we need to cool down. And so I wanted to connect the building systems with human systems that we could relate to and act on that. So I was looking at different ways that people can act on behavior change within their own within the buildings that they come into, that they occupy, that also can actually relate to a little bit of aesthetics or beauty. And one of the other elements of this was looking at what's called junk space, which is a term coined by Rem Koolhaas, which is he's an architectural philosopher that looks at things that are in the building that you don't see. So the same things like in our own personal bodies, we don't see our veins, we don't see our arteries, but we know they're there. And in a building, you have pipes, you have electricity, you have insulation, you have a lot of systems in there that you're also not aware of. So this is also to bring that junk space forward. And you know, you have the big building, then you have things in your own personal things that you can control, like your computer, your cell phone, your light, your home office system. How do you address the things that you can actually control in your everyday lives? So I created another system, a microsystem, using your home office, home charger, light, computer, and it took that data, those kilowatts per hour, and connected them to what is called a kilowatt reader, and hacked the kilowatt reader so it tweeted that information. So if you're away from your desk, you know how much energy your desk is using, and then connected them to Arduinos and motors that connected to the southern respiratory system up here that showed how much energy your home office system was using. So trying to look at more visual ways that we can actually interface with our own personal lives and the amount of energy that we exert and the amount of energy that we use within ourselves. Okay. And so this is sort of like a map of how this worked. So first you had a power strip which connected to the kilowatt reader, and all of these things connected into it, the light, the computer, and I connected Arduinos and motors into the sculpture that moved in, according to how much energy it was using. And then of course you can watch it via Twitter if you were interested in monitoring it while you're away. So that's an example of how I have been looking at approaching technology through eco art. I have one other example of that I'm going to kind of talk about, and that's through something that has turned from a social practice project into actually more of a business, and that's the art inspector, saving the earth by changing art. And I do that through legislative reform, so creating a policy of best practices for how artists can actually lower their carbon footprint, a healthy art program, so this is education, and third-party certification, so green certifying artwork. So what would happen if artists actually had to have a stamp that said that there actually was an eco artwork? And so this is the sort of thing that I've been trying to address with this project, and I've had many iterations of it over the years. And one of the controversial topics and questions that I pose within this is, what role do artists have in working sustainably? And when I've done this project, some artists have said, leave me alone, you know, I'm already marginalized, I shouldn't be looked at. And some artists say, well, how do I change? Or what can I change? And so this is some part of the dialogue that I'm trying to have. And right now I'm working on putting together a conference to actually create a standard of practices, bringing in different industries. Because when I look at this project, I'm looking at more as a product design and also innovative material innovation, because there are not products on the market that artists can buy and adopt to change the way that they're working. And there's not funding to actually modify their studios to bring in better respirator systems or ventilation systems. And the cumbersome masks and gloves that artists should be using, artists are ignoring because it interferes with their work practice. However, big industry, industrial design, architecture have adopted these practices. So it's taking these same methodologies that were created to create LEED certification programs and taking them into the art world. And so I'm working with a lot of people from all around the world on making this happen. And I'll do one quick video on this so you can kind of get a synopsis of it before I move on.
The reason we they look at a variety of artists as opposed to just one specific type is that this really is also to show artists out there who haven't had these inspections done what other ones that are working in similar ways are doing, and then how they're looking at their process and how that they can change. Because sometimes we don't know what these products actually do to us.
I call myself an eco-friendly artist, and the reason is because I try to use as many found objects as my materials as I can. The reason I wanted to participate in this program is because I feel like I kind of already am heading down this path. I already have a head start in being an eco-friendly artist.
So, one of the things that I do through these inspections is I do use equipment that I borrow from PG&E to do energy audits on the studio. So that includes testing the amount of power they use. This is something that I'm working on right now. It's just sort of like an interface design or a product for to change the interface of a kilowatt meter, which tells you how much energy any product you have is using. You essentially plug this into the wall, and it'll tell you how much whatever product is how much it costs, how many kilowatts it's using, and things like that. But I wanted to think about different ways to creatively change that interface. So this is just something I've been playing with, and I'll pass this around so you can kind of get an idea what a kilowatt meter looks like, and also what are some things that you can think about that can change the way it looks. Okay. So I want to move from some of my work into other, I think, very important works in eco art and tech. And one that I think is important to be on the lookout for is the Land Art Generator Initiative. This is actually more of an ideas competition, but I think what they're doing is leading into the right direction. They're asking public artists to create ideas for public artworks, land artworks, that not just will sit there and be nice for the next 100 years, 1,000 years, but also actually generate energy. How do we generate clean energy from our public artwork? And they they've had 2 iterations of this competition, and they have a 3rd one coming up, which I hope to enter. But one of the things that I feel is important that they do is like they're looking at this not just from an art standpoint, but they're looking at it from a job standpoint, an economy standpoint, what is good for the earth, what is good for public involvement. And the way that they're approaching it is really just bringing a way to make places where renewable energy can happen in the public eye. And I really do love that idea. And one of the things that they issued is a field guide to renewable energy. And this is for artists to use. So artists can actually figure out what type of clean energy can I use in my artwork. And they have different elements in here from different types of photovoltaic cells. It tells you its application, what it can be used for, and other things like that. So I'm going to pass this around because I find that this tool that they issued is a really good way for artists to start to think and work in this way, because they've done the research for you, which is one of the harder parts. And I'm also going to pass around this book. I'll show you the, shoot, would I just turn this off? I think I turned it off. How did I do that? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, hold on. Good thing I didn't turn it off. Oops. Okay. Good. There we go. Okay, there we go. So this is the first place winner from last year's Land Art Generator. This team actually created this idea of this wind tunnel that would be using a technology called piezoelectric generator, because I'm not sure if that's the way that you pronounce it, but it actually would create 5,500 megawatts a year. So I think that is kind of really cool. With the different proposals that they have to talk about actually how much energy the piece will actually create, and that's one of the criteria. But I'll pass this around. This is a collection of some of the entries from the last couple of years, so you can get an idea about what some of this work looks like. All right, so one of the other things I think is important to look at is how can eco art not just use green technologies, but actually create behavioral change. And this is a project that I was project manager for a few years ago, and it was the San Jose Climate Clock Initiative. And the San Jose Climate Clock Initiative's mission was to create an iconic landmark that will last 100 years, that would influence public behavior, and would be built to the sum of $20 million. And there was 3 finalists who were in residence for about 3 months, and they worked on their project for up to about 3 years on coming up with these ideas. And the one that I'm going to show you today is the winner of this project, and fundraising is still working to be built on this, but this is called the organograph, and I'll explain it as it's playing.
The organograph
they're waiting for you. I'm just going to do the first minute of it.
Moving slowly along a boulevard within the Diridon Station redevelopment area, the sculpture will be both a civic beacon and a topic of public discussion and awareness of climate change for the next 100 years. The sculpture is a 75-foot tall kinetic building with 5 internal floors in the shape of a heliotropic flower. Powered entirely by the sun, the sculpture opens its petals at sunrise to follow the sun and collect its energy and to invite the public inside. Powered by a network of large planetary gears into glass floors, the organograph rotates once per day, acting as a giant transparent clockwork through which the public can watch and see the passage of time. Operating in vertical shaftways between level 3, 4, and 5 are 3 large rings. The rings can simultaneously and independently rotate and travel vertically, providing a visually rich, immersive, and interactive environment. The rings house depictions of the 3 main actors in a simple model of the global carbon cycle: plants, animals, and fossil fuel-powered machines. The plant actor moves carbon, depicted by small white marbles from the atmosphere down to the biomass belt. This represents the anabolic process of photosynthetic carbon fixation.
Okay, I didn't want to, it's a little bit too long to go over too much of it, but I'll actually try to go back so you can kind of see the image. But essentially the organograph over 100 years will grow and develop and plant things along this path, as well as measure the amount of carbon that there is in the atmosphere. And these sort of idea competitions are really difficult to realize, but if you can think about the massive opportunities that can happen when people start to really look at our works in the public view, that can actually transform and change the way people are thinking and their behavior. The other 2 projects were really amazing as well. One of them was by a team in LA called Green Meme that did a wild wilderness project, and that was basically a 20-year residence that brought in the institutional data systems into view. Okay, I'm running out of time. Sorry, quickly. Last one, Sabrina Raff. She does a lot of work with robotics. She also uses a lot of solar in her work. One of the things that I really love about this one grower, is this is a carbon dioxide detector, and as we exhale carbon, it inhales the carbon, similar to how trees do, and then it actually illustrates and draws a green path along the wall in the gallery space. So it's sort of addressing our relationship to nature and robotics, and some of her work looks at these sort of ways that we can actually interact with our environments using developing technologies, green technologies, and the environment. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up with this one. So I have a Google Earth Plus group called Art Tech Earth. You're welcome to join the discussion around these topics. And I am always open for ideas and collaboration because this is not something that an artist can do on their own. They really need to work with engineering, science, toxicology, manufacturing, economy, everybody. So I'm really big on bringing the community together to solve some of these big issues using eco art. Okay, so thank you. Oh, one more thing. If anybody wants to look, I do have the climate clock catalog. Yeah. Okay, so I'll pass this also around. Maybe I'll start at this end and we'll pass it.
Okay, any questions? Go for it.
Thank you. I'll take your question.
Has anybody done any work, originally from Detroit, and I knew people who were designing cars, and they started designing windows that opened with electricity, and the seat was adjusted. And I would talk to these people, and they were very proud of these things. And then they would pay money to go to a gym to exercise the muscles they had just bought something that eliminated that exercise. And to this day, I can't understand that. I mean, all our labor-saving devices are probably causing us a lack of exercise. Is there a movement to maybe save energy and design exercise?
There is actually, there are gyms that are actually hooked up so that the treadmills and the cycles and everything actually are powering the gym itself. There is some of that. It's not trend. It hasn't really picked up, but there is that initiative. It's hard because it is also takes trial and error. But I think that's a good idea.
I mean, people won't get up to change the station on a television set.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, that's true. I mean, and that goes with the cultural change. I mean, if artists are the provocateurs of culture, maybe that's something that we can do to inspire movement. Maybe that's something that we need to connect with health agencies. What?
I think it's called a bicycle.
Oh, bicycle, yes.
or walking.
Dorothy?
So what are your findings with new media artists? I think a lot of people's assumption with new media and digital artists is like, oh, they're not working with found material. But if you think about it, technology still needs a vessel to,
right.
And a lot of people kind of have that, or maybe that distinction is not drawn, or like.
I think it needs to be addressed. I don't think it is.
Findings with that?
There's only one person I know who's really working on that, with looking at the e-waste and the energy that it uses to power things, because e-waste is a crucial and a problem, and it's an ever-growing problem, and digital artists are notorious. They do like their gadgets, and they're constantly buying things, and there isn't a lot addressing those type of things. Like, what I would like to do at some point is do energy audits on new media artists. So everything from like the projectors and the power to where they actually how the cycle is on the new media artwork itself, because that is an issue. And also storage space, where are they storing stuff on their servers. There's one server out of Iceland that is completely a clean energy server, but it's not very well known. So where are you storing stuff on a server that's taking up just as much power as if you were doing something else?
Have you done any, or do you know anyone who's doing artwork that involves the politics of ecology, of climate change?
There are people who are involving themselves in that to a certain degree. I think that there are artists who look at ecology and politics in art, and like if you go to the Women Environmental Art Directory site, there's a lot of them who look into that. Burning Embers was a project a few years ago by Artists in Action and the New York Times, who asked people to really look at the IPCC report and create different ways that people can understand that type of thing and how can you take action on it. And I think there's people who are branched out of some of the Occupy art movements that are doing more work on the political side of things that connect to ecology. I don't think there's enough of it. It's not something that is a ton of it, but there are definitely people out there.
Can you speak to some new trends in empathetic design?
So I am not, that's not my complete area of expertise, but I know that empathic design is really popular, especially in the tech world. Facebook uses it all the time, and I think some of the other groups like Minds, the new thing by one of the Twitter founders, and that's like looking at some of the deeper questions and the listening channels between how people are interfacing with technology and how design will relate. IDEO does that, for example. So it's really like taking the time to listen and to analyze that, and it could take, for some people, it could take them several years to come up with a design that's really responsive to the actual needs of the people rather than these assumptions about what people really need. It's really taking that time to analyze work before it is designed.
Okay, very good.